Craig, good to see you again here.
Good to see you too, Jason.
Republican voters are going to see both your names on the ballot. You guys share many of the same Republican positions, but how would you say that you are most different from your opponent, John O'Shea?
Well, it's basically, in my opinion, who's more qualified, who has a record. I have a proven conservative voting record in Austin that I want to take to Washington, D.C. I have a proven record of problem solving, of getting things done, and I'm going to roll up my sleeves and go to D.C. and work just as hard as I have been in Austin.
He has a lot of ads out there. He's talking a lot about you being a rhino, a Republican in name only. What's your reaction to that?
I think any voter should go look at our records. And I have a proven conservative record. It's why Greg Abbott has endorsed me. It's why Dan Patrick has endorsed me. It's why former Governor Rick Perry has endorsed me. I have a proven record on all the issues, a proven conservative voting record.
Your opponent is really trying to characterize this race and saying it comes down to the vote on impeachment, on impeaching Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas last year. He supports Paxton. Paxton has endorsed him. What do you make of that as a characterization for this race?
Well, I think people need to be very clear about what we voted for. We followed the Constitution. Put before us was the question of whether or not Ken Paxton should stand trial. Not one of us in the Texas House voted that he was innocent or guilty. Based on the Constitution, we were basically members of a grand jury. Does he, based on the facts given, should he stand trial? And so not only did the Texas House agree with that, the Texas Senate agreed with that, because that's the very first vote that they took before they proceeded with the trial. Is there enough evidence for him to stand trial?
Whether to accept the case.
Whether to accept the case,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do you regret that vote at all?
No, not at all.
Let's talk about Congress here. This week there's going to be a vote to oust the Republican Speaker, Mike Johnson. Several Republicans are upset that he passed aid for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, along with Democrats as well. If you were in Congress right now, how would you vote?
I would certainly not oust the Speaker of the House. 8 Republicans sided with all the Democrats to oust Speaker McCarthy. I thought that was a wrong thing to do. When you elect a speaker, that's your leader of your party during that session. That's who you should stick with. I think it's just causes chaos. And so I certainly would vote to stick with Speaker Johnson.
Do you support aid for Ukraine?
Absolutely.
Israel? Taiwan?
Absolutely. I
want to ask you about the headlines right now. What are your thoughts on the pro-Palestinian movements and protests and demonstrations in colleges across the state?
Well, first and foremost, I think I'm appalled at the lack of leadership by Joe Biden in the White House for standing by and not saying a word. Where's a leader of our country in a time of crisis? And this is crisis on our college campuses. The fact that there's pro-Palestinian demonstrations, I defend the right for free speech, don't get me wrong. But there's a criminal element to it. These aren't all students on our campuses, as we proved at the University of Texas. People who were arrested had no affiliation with the university whatsoever. So in my opinion, this is organized chaos. It is funded by people who aren't very friendly to our government, and should be stopped.
Any thoughts about the arrest that happened here? Texas handled this differently than other states. Texas seemed to have nipped it in the bud by moving law enforcement in quickly. Other states have had a lot more issues. After Columbia, they took over a building. UCLA, there was a bunch of brawls out there.
Yeah.
How do you think Texas
Well,
handled
great kudos to Jay Hartzell, the president of the University of Texas, to Governor Abbott. When UT needed state troopers, Governor Abbott said, absolutely, we will have troopers there. Because they saw what was going to happen based on what happened in other states, what happened at Columbia. You start with encampments, and then they start taking over buildings. And so it took NYPD and to go into the buildings in Columbia to remove those people. And so I praise the response for what University of Texas system and Governor Abbott did to stop what was going to happen there.
On the national front and international front, there are a lot of calls for a ceasefire with Israel and in Palestine against Hamas, what's left of Hamas. Do you support those calls?
Well, I'm all for a ceasefire if the demands are met, meaning, number one, return the hostages. Start there. I mean, you can't have any more discussion with Hamas or anybody else unless they agree to return the hostages. It's kind of like border security. We can't have any more talk about what to do with illegals here or anything like that until we shut down our border. So it starts with the returning of the hostages first and foremost, in my opinion, before you can have any further discussions.
Well, Let's talk about the race here. Why in the world did you want to leave a Republican majority in Austin to go to Congress, where Republicans don't have a majority, across the board? You could get as much as you wanted done. In Austin, you probably won't be able to do that in Congress.
Well,
Why did you want to leave?
it is a bittersweet decision, and it was very tough telling my colleagues, who I've been there 12 years with, that I was going to make this decision and potential jump to Washington, D.C. But I've accomplished a lot. I mean, I've authored legislation on a tough fentanyl bill that we authored last session to put dealers and distributors of fentanyl behind bars. I've authored ethics reform. I've authored election integrity reform. I've backed the blue reform in this state. And so basically I want to take those ideas up to Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. is broken. And certainly in the White House, it lacks leadership. I look forward to working with Donald Trump next year to certainly defend our borders. Our border system is broken. The Federal Border Patrol has been told to stand down by the Biden administration and not do their jobs they are hired and paid to do. So in my opinion, we need new leadership in Washington, D.C., starting at the White House. And we need people who are going to roll their sleeves and go to work and solve the problems of the nation the way I've gone to Austin to help solve the problems for the state of Texas.
To get anything done, though, you have to work across the aisle in D.C. Is that something you can do?
Look, in the Texas State House, it takes 76 votes to pass anything. I've been able to pass legislation session after session by working with others. And so,
but those are mainly Republicans.
Those are mainly Republicans, but also Democrats. I mean, there are people that I had to put predators of sexual assault behind bars, and I didn't get 150 votes on that. So believe it or not, it's tough to pass anything in the Texas State House. I'm certain it'll be tough to pass anything in the U.S. Congress. It starts with relationships, and that's what I'm going to go up there and do.
If elected, top two priorities, what are they?
Top two priorities, hands down, shut down the border. I mean, again, hopefully we'll have President Trump back in there to where we have federal assistance with shutting down our border.
And when you say shut it down, I mean, explain what that means, because
right
Texas
now,
and Mexico are the two largest trading partners.
Yeah, but we have an open, porous border. I was down there a month ago, Jason, and literally we were up in a helicopter within 1 minute. We watched 35 people crossing the border because, again, the Federal Border Patrol has been told, don't do your job. And so they cross the border. They're allowed to stay in the United States. They're processed, meaning fingerprinted, some are ID'd, and told come back in 2 or 3 years for your asylum.
But what so what does shut down the border look like?
Well, it means when whoever you catch crossing the border, you send them back to the country where they came from. You start there. You don't allow them to stay in the United States of America for 2 to 3 years, letting them go freely wherever they want to go, not knowing who they are, where they came from, or what whether they're terrorists or not. So you start there. You catch them, you send them back to the country where they came from, you tell them to go through our legal immigration system the way we have it. Second issue you asked about was, hands down, we've got to get a handle on our budget. We have a $34 trillion deficit, the largest deficit in American history. That is a joke. That's ridiculous. We shouldn't have that sort of debt. That's on the debt. We're not paying that. Our kids and grandkids are going to be paying that over time. We balance a budget in the state of Texas. We should have a balanced budget in the United States of America.
Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor, let me just start that again, yeah.
Okay.
Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick both endorsed you. How do you think their endorsements are going to help you in the runoff?
Oh, I think that, look, I'm introducing myself to a lot of people who don't know me very well. About 30–40% of this congressional district is in my House district. My voters have known me. They've sent me back 6 times. Only had 1 primary during that time. So they're very pleased, obviously, with my representation. I have to go introduce myself to a whole bunch of new people who don't know me very well. So having those endorsements of Governor Abbott, former Governor Perry, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, as well as State Senator Phil King, Drew Springer, Kelly Hancock, I mean, the list goes on, has been very meaningful, and they know that they are proven conservatives. They know I've been a proven conservative, and that's why I'll be in Washington, D.C.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.